My stepdaughter gave me a card for Father's Day that said, "You are not my real dad. Thank you for everything." My wife read it, shrugged her shoulders, and said I was too sensitive. After that, I took my money from them. They called and screamed that I was not a worthy husband. What I did next, I woke up that morning with more energy than I'd had in weeks. It was Father's Day, and even though I wasn't Lillian's biological father, I thought maybe, just maybe, this year would be different. I scrambled eggs, cooked bacon just the way Diana liked it, crispy, and even made pancakes with chocolate chips for Lillian. I set the table, laid out the food, and sat down waiting for them to wake up, feeling something I hadn't in a while: hope. I heard Lillian's door creak open first. She shuffled into the kitchen wearing pajama shorts and a tank top, thumbs flying across her phone screen. She didn't say a word, just walked past me, tossed a small envelope on the table like it was a napkin, and poured herself some juice. I blinked down at the envelope. "Hey, Lillian," I said, trying to keep my voice light. "Happy Sunday. Thanks for the card." She didn't look up. "Whatever," she muttered. I opened the envelope slowly. The front of the card said Happy Father's Day in bold block letters. Inside, in messy blue ink, it read, "You're not my real dad. Thanks for nothing." No signature. Just that. My chest tightened like someone had stuffed gravel in my lungs. I looked up, trying to meet her eyes, but she had already walked into the living room. A moment later, Diana wandered in, yawning, tying her rope. "Hey," I said, my voice smaller than I wanted it to be. I held the card up slightly. "Did you see what she wrote?" Diana glanced at the card. Then she gave me that half smile she used when she didn't want to deal with anything serious. "She's a teenager. You know how they are. Don't be so sensitive." I stared at her. "That's it? That's your response?" Diana poured herself a cup of coffee, shrugged. She probably didn't mean it. "Just let it go." I let the card fall onto the table. The pancakes were getting cold. "I made breakfast," I said, barely louder than a whisper. "That's nice," she replied, already walking into the hallway. "I'll eat later. I'm not really hungry right now." And just like that, the room felt empty. Not because I was alone, but because it was clear I didn't matter. Not really. Not to them. I sat there, staring at the syrup pooling around a heart-shaped pancake I'd made for Lillian, and realized that I'd been holding on to a version of this family that didn't exist. Not for them, anyway. It wasn't about the card, or the joke, or the breakfast. It was about the silence. The indifference. The way Diana laughed off my pain, and Lillian couldn't even fake eye contact. I thought Father's Day would make me feel seen. Instead, it reminded me just how invisible I really was. 2 days later, I decided to try again. Maybe I was being too sensitive. Maybe Diana was right. Maybe I needed to stop waiting for them to make me feel appreciated and just focus on creating moments that brought us together. So I booked a reservation at Sienna's, this upscale Italian place Diana had been wanting to try. They had linen tablecloths, candles on every table, and a wait list a mile long. Except I'd called in a favor and gotten us a table for 3. I picked up flowers for Diana on the way and a little dessert box for Lillian, even though I knew she'd barely acknowledge it. We got there just after 7. The place was quiet and dimly lit, full of soft clinking silverware and low murmurs. A perfect setting, I thought. A chance to hit reset. Lillian slid into her seat without saying a word, her eyes already locked on her phone. Diana smiled at the host, sat down across from me, and pulled her phone out too. I cleared my throat. "This place is nice, huh?" Diana said without looking up. Lillian giggled at something on her screen. I waited a few more seconds. "So, school going okay, Lil?" She didn't answer, just kept scrolling. "Lillian," I said a little more firmly. She sighed and looked up like I'd interrupted something sacred. "What?" I asked how school's going. She rolled her eyes. "Fine." And that was that. We ordered. I tried to keep the conversation alive, asked Diana how work was going, told her about a project I'd been tackling at the office. She nodded here and there, mumbled "uh-huh" a few times. Her screen lit her face more than the candle between us. Then I heard them whispering. Diana leaned toward Lillian, showing her something on her phone. They both laughed quietly. "What's so funny?" I asked. They looked up. Diana smirked. "Nothing. Just a meme." "Can it wait?" I said, trying to keep the edge out of my voice. "We're having dinner." Diana's smile faded. "God, you're tense." "It's not that serious." "It is to me," I said. "I just wanted one night. One dinner where I wasn't ignored." Lillian rolled her eyes again. "Here we go." "No," I said, leaning forward. "Seriously, I book a nice place. I get us out of the house. And I'm sitting here like a damn ghost while you two laugh at your phones." Diana frowned. "You're being dramatic." "Am I?" I asked. "Because it feels like I'm the only one trying." We sat in silence for a long time after that. The waiter brought our food, and we ate mostly in quiet. Diana and Lillian whispered a few more times, but I didn't ask. I just sat there chewing slow, each bite like cardboard. And while I stared at my half-eaten ravioli, I thought about the vacations I'd paid for, the braces Lillian wore that I financed, the bills I covered when Diana's work was slow, the way I always put them first. I thought about how none of it seemed to matter. That night, as we left the restaurant, Lillian walked ahead, earbuds in, and Diana trailed behind, texting. Not once did either of them look back. And that's when I knew. I didn't just feel alone. I was alone. That weekend, after another night of sitting in the living room alone while Diana and Lillian stayed holed up in their rooms, I called my brother Philip. He answered on the second ring. "Hey man," he said, "what's up? You sound off." I leaned back on the couch and stared at the blank TV screen. "It's Father's Day week. You know that?" "Yeah. Happy belated, by the way." I gave a dry chuckle. "Thanks. Didn't exactly feel like a holiday." There was a pause. "What happened?" So I told him. I told him about the card Lillian had thrown at me like it was trash. I told him how Diana brushed it off like I was being overly emotional. I told him about the dinner at Sienna's, how I paid over $200 to be ignored across a table I shouldn't have bothered reserving. Philip was quiet for a bit. Then he let out a slow whistle. "Damn, that's rough." "Yeah," I muttered. "And I don't even know why it hit me so hard this year. It's not like they ever made a big deal of it. I guess I just expected more." "You expected respect," he said simply. "And that's not too much to ask." I stayed silent. "You've been letting them walk all over you for years, man." That got my attention. "What do you mean? You've been paying Lillian's private school tuition, right?" "Yeah." "And the car Diana drives?" "I make the payments," I admitted. Philip sighed. "You're carrying the whole damn household, and they treat you like a doormat. I don't know how you've put up with it this long." I opened my mouth to argue, but nothing came out. Because deep down, I knew he was right. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept running through all the things I'd done since I married Diana. Paid off her credit card debt, covered Lillian's orthodontist, renovated the kitchen, bought birthday gifts for her family, helped her mom with medical bills. But when I looked at our joint account statements, I noticed something else. Almost everything was coming out of my income. Diana's paychecks went into the account, but they rarely stayed there. Clothes, beauty appointments, Amazon orders, salon visits. Meanwhile, I was using my paycheck to pay the mortgage, groceries, utilities, and Lillian's school. I pulled up an old spreadsheet I'd used when we first combined finances. Back then, we agreed to split things fairly based on income. But somewhere along the way, I'd stopped checking, and she'd stopped caring. That night, I sat there for hours, going through months of transactions. The imbalance hit me like a slap. I'd been shouldering everything, and no one even said thank you. Philip was right. I hadn't just been used. I'd been groomed into thinking this was normal. But not anymore. The following Tuesday, I took a sick day from work. Not because I was physically ill, but because I needed answers. Real ones. I booked a morning appointment with a financial advisor a buddy at work had recommended. Someone objective. Someone who could help me see the picture I hadn't wanted to look at for too long. Her name was Karen, mid-40s, sharp eyes, no-nonsense tone. She shook my hand firmly and asked why I was there. "I think I'm being taken advantage of," I said, folding my hands on the desk. "By my own family." Karen nodded like she'd heard that before. "Let's take a look." I handed her the files I'd printed out the night before, statements from the last 2 years, income reports, credit card summaries, and our shared checking account. She clicked away on her keyboard, scribbling notes as she asked questions. "Okay, so your wife's income averages around $65,000 annually. Yours is about $98,000. You're paying the mortgage, utilities, car insurance, groceries, tuition, and credit card debt. Meanwhile, she covers mostly personal spending," I muttered. "Clothes, hair, gifts for her family, and sometimes stuff for the house, but not the big stuff." Karen raised an eyebrow. "And this has been the arrangement since when?" I exhaled slowly. It wasn't supposed to be this way. We were going to split everything proportional to our income. But I stopped paying attention. I just kept covering whatever needed to be paid. She tapped her pen against the desk. "Well, based on what I'm seeing, you're covering about 80 to 90% of household expenses. She's contributing less than 10. I swallowed hard. I figured as much. "You're carrying the financial load of a 2-income household by yourself," she said. "And judging by these credit card statements, she's also racking up debt on the side." I stared at the numbers in front of me, suddenly feeling stupid. Not just for letting it happen, but for pretending it wasn't. Karen leaned forward. "You're not broke. But if this continues, your savings will be gone in 5 years. Maybe less." Something in me clicked. Not panic, resolve. That afternoon, I drove straight to the bank. I opened a personal account in my name only. I didn't tell Diana. I didn't mention it when I got home. I just started moving things slowly, carefully. First, I changed the direct deposit on my paycheck. Then I transferred a few recurring bills into my name alone and rerouted them to the new account. I left the shared account with enough to keep appearances normal, but the big payments, mortgage, tuition, Utilities, I took control of those directly. That weekend, I also cut up the secondary credit card Diana had access to. It wasn't malicious. I just told her the bank was updating the policy and that we'd both get new cards soon. She shrugged. Didn't ask questions. Back in my office that night, I started a spreadsheet. Every dollar I moved. Every payment I claimed back. Every financial shift I made. I logged. Not because I planned to argue, but because I was done enabling. For the first time in years, I felt something close to peace. Not because things were fixed, but because I had finally stopped pretending they weren't broken. By the second week of my quiet little operation, things had started to change. Not drastically, just enough that you had to be paying attention to notice. Luckily, I was. The first time Diana seemed to catch on was when she came into the living room holding the mail, her brows furrowed. "Did you pay the electric bill?" she asked, waving the envelope like an accusation. I didn't even look up from my laptop. "Yep, paid it last Friday." She hesitated. "Because it's not showing in the shared account." I looked at her calmly. "That's because I paid it from my personal account." There was a pause. "Why?" "Just keeping things organized," I said casually. "Trying something new." She stood there for another second, then gave a tight smile. "Okay." Just surprised me. And then she walked away. That was the first text I got from her later that night. "Diana, are we switching how we do money now?" "Me, I'm just simplifying things. Handling my part directly." No response. Over the next few days, I kept moving pieces. I canceled a joint subscription she always used. Took my name off the shared Amazon Prime account. Switched my credit card info off Lillian's tutoring app. Everything that had quietly drained me for years, I unplugged it. Silently. No fights. No scenes. Just unhooked the cords and walked away. The silence in the house grew thicker. Diana wasn't yelling, but she was texting more. "Diana, is everything okay? Diana, are you mad at me? Diana, you've been really distant lately." I didn't ignore her. I just kept my answers short. "Me, I'm fine. Me, just focusing on work. Me, we'll talk soon." She didn't push, at least not at first. Then came the passive-aggressive questions over dinner. "So, did you forget to transfer money for groceries?" "The card didn't go through." "I didn't forget," I said. "I figured you'd handle it this week." She blinked. "Since when?" "Since I covered the last 4 in a row." She didn't argue. Just stared at her plate and didn't touch her food. Lillian, of course, stayed in her room most of the time. No thank yous. No apologies. Just the occasional sarcastic comment when she came down to grab snacks. But something was shifting. I could feel it. One night, Diana sent me a long message while we were in the same house. "Diana, I don't know what's going on with you, but this isn't healthy. We need to talk. Can we please stop playing games?" I stared at my screen for a long time before responding. "Me, I'm not playing games. I'm just done pretending." She read it. Never responded. For the first time in years, I went to bed not worrying about what tomorrow's bills would look like. I didn't wake up panicked about overdraft fees or forgotten payments. I didn't wonder if I was doing enough. I was doing enough for myself. Diana didn't say much the rest of the week. The house stayed quiet, but not the peaceful kind. It was the silence that comes before a storm. It finally happened on a Thursday night, right after dinner. Lillian had gone upstairs, probably FaceTiming one of her friends. I was in the kitchen rinsing my plate when Diana walked in and closed the door behind her like she was about to stage an intervention. "Okay," she said sharply. "Enough." I didn't turn around. "Enough what?" "This passive-aggressive nonsense," she snapped. "You're acting like a child." I dried my hands and leaned against the counter. "Because I stopped paying for everything without question?" Her jaw clenched. "Because you're being weird. Secretive. Distant. You're moving money around, cutting off cards, changing the way we do things without even discussing it." I didn't realize I needed permission to manage my own money. "That's not what I'm saying," she said quickly. "But we're a family. We're supposed to talk about these things." I finally met her eyes. Funny. I don't remember anyone asking me before they started relying on me for everything. Her arms crossed over her chest. "You've always taken care of things." "Exactly," I said, voice calm but firm. "And I'm done taking care of people who don't appreciate it." She scoffed. "Oh, come on. This again? Because Lillian gave you a mean card? You're seriously still hung up on that?" I felt something in me snap, not loudly, not dramatically. Just a clean break. Like a rope finally snapping under pressure. "This has nothing to do with a card," I said, stepping forward. "It's about years of being taken for granted. Years of being the one who pays, sacrifices, adjusts, while you and your daughter act like I'm just some inconvenient roommate with a credit card." Diana's face reddened. "That's not fair." "No," I said. "What's not fair is that I make 90% of the income, pay for the roof over your head, your car, her school, the bills, and the one time I ask for respect, I'm told I'm being sensitive." She opened her mouth, but I held up a hand. "I've got paperwork," I said. "Bank statements. Expense reports. Income ratios. All of it. If you want to play fair, we can start now. Equal contributions moving forward. Split the bills based on income, like we agreed in the beginning. Or we go to a financial mediator. Her expression changed. You're threatening me with paperwork? I'm setting boundaries, I said flatly. Financial and emotional. I'm not your ATM, Diana. And I'm not Lillian's doormat. This dynamic? It's over. Silence stretched between us. She looked away, arms still crossed. So what now? Now, I said, grabbing the envelope from the side table and placing it on the counter, we figure out what this marriage actually is. If it's going to work, we go to therapy, real therapy. And if it's not, we start talking separation. Because I'm not living like this anymore. Diana stared at the envelope, then at me. Her eyes narrowed, but she didn't reach for it. I don't want to fight, she said quietly. Neither do I replied. But I'm finally willing to. And with that, I walked past her. The silence between us no longer something I feared, but something I had finally learned to live with. The envelope sat untouched on the counter for 3 days. We barely spoke during that time. Diana tiptoed around me like I was a ticking bomb, but the truth was, I wasn't angry anymore. I was calm, tired, but clear-headed in a way I hadn't felt in years. Then, on Saturday morning, everything changed. I was cleaning out the hall closet when I found a manila folder shoved behind some old blankets. It wasn't mine. I opened it, thinking maybe it was tax paperwork. It wasn't. Inside was a printout of an email chain between Diana and someone named Lucas W. Her coworker. There were meeting times, phone numbers, and a contact sheet for a divorce attorney. Dated back 4 months. I froze. My fingers went numb, like my body had gone into standby mode. For months ago, she had already started preparing to leave me. Even before the Father's Day fallout. Even before the dinner at Sienna's. I sat down on the stairs, the folder in my lap, reading every line like it was someone else's story. Just waiting for the right moment. He won't even see it coming. I've already got the lawyer on standby. There was even a breakdown of assets and a discussion about custody of Lillian, as if I was just an afterthought. Not even a real parent. Just a name on the mortgage and a paycheck in the budget. When Diana came downstairs and saw the folder in my hand, she stopped cold. I found it, I said simply. She didn't ask what I meant. Her face dropped like a curtain being yanked down. I stood up. How long have you been planning to leave? She crossed her arms, but her voice wavered. It wasn't like that. No, I said, stepping forward. Because it looks pretty damn calculated to me. The lawyer. The financial plan. Even a backup living arrangement with Lucas. Her lips parted. Nothing happened with Lucas. I don't care, I said. What I care about is that you were setting me up while I was out here fighting for this marriage. She sighed, like I was making a scene. I just didn't know what I wanted. Bullshit, I snapped. You knew exactly what you wanted. You just didn't expect me to find out. Diana stayed quiet. You manipulated me, I continued, my voice calmer now. You let me believe this was salvageable, that therapy might fix things, but you had a foot out the door for months. She turned away. You don't understand what it's like, always having to live on someone else's terms. That hit me sideways. My terms? You mean the ones where I paid for your life while you looked for an exit? And then, like salt in an open wound, Lillian came downstairs with her phone in hand and looked at me with that same deadpan expression she always wore. She's not the only one who's over it, she said flatly. You've been acting like a dictator. I blinked at her. Excuse me. Lillian folded her arms. You act like you're the only one who matters. You make everything about what you've done for us. I've raised you, I said, pointing at her. I've paid for your school, your clothes, your food, your life. Because you chose to, she snapped. No one asked you. That silence came again, sharp and final. And in that moment, I realized what Diana had done. Over the years, she'd slowly pulled Lillian into her corner. Fed her the idea that I was controlling. That I owed them. That I was the villain in my own house. The betrayal wasn't just Diana's. It was generational now. I looked at both of them, then back at the folder in my hand. Well, I said, that makes this easier. Diana narrowed her eyes. What does? I stared straight at her. Ending it. And I walked upstairs, not because I was angry, but because I was ready. Diana moved out the following week. It wasn't dramatic. No shouting. No crying. Just quiet packing, a rented SUV in the driveway, and a couple of awkward conversations about logistics. She took her clothes, her skincare collection, a few framed photos from the hallway, and most of the living room decorations she'd picked out over the years. She didn't take Lillian. That surprised me more than anything. I figured she'd insist on keeping her close, but instead, she said, it's better for now if she stays. She has school. Friends. She doesn't need more disruption. I didn't argue. I just nodded. Lillian didn't say much those first few days. She stayed in her room most of the time, barely looked me in the eye. I didn't push. I figured she was confused, angry, maybe even embarrassed. I was too, in a way. Diana started therapy immediately. I knew because she texted me after the first session. Diana, it wasn't what I expected. But it's probably overdue. Me. Good. Diana, they said we could do joint sessions later, if you're open to it. I didn't reply. At the same time, I got Lillian into her own sessions. I gave her the choice, but I could tell she needed someone to talk to. She agreed on one condition. You don't sit in with me. It's private. Fair enough, I said. The house felt strange those first few weeks. Like a hotel room that had been lived in too long. Too quiet. Too big. But little by little, I started adjusting. I went for long walks after work. I stopped checking our joint account. It was basically empty now, anyway. I cooked simple dinners and started reading again, something I hadn't done in years. I even met up with an old friend from college for drinks one night and laughed harder than I had in months. And then, slowly, something shifted with Lillian. It started with her asking what I was making for dinner one night. Then she sat at the table instead of eating upstairs. A few days later, she asked if I could help her with a science project. Nothing big, but it felt real. One night, we watched a movie together. Halfway through, she mumbled, I didn't know she was already planning to leave. I looked over at her. I didn't either. She stared at the screen, not blinking. She told me you'd probably blow up, that you'd try to control everything once she told you. I stayed quiet. I think she was wrong, she said. Then she added, almost under her breath, I'm sorry. It wasn't much, but it was something. Therapy started helping both of us, I think. Lillian's mood softened. She asked more questions. She started texting me randomly during the day, nothing serious, just stuff like this kid in math class is so dumb, or can we get pizza tonight? And every time she did, it felt like a piece of her was coming back. As for Diana, I could tell from her occasional messages that she was struggling, paying bills on her own, dealing with her choices. The last time we talked, she mentioned that Lucas had distanced himself, too much baggage, she said. I didn't ask for details. I didn't care. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just done. And in being done, I finally had the space to breathe, to think, to heal. The house was quieter than ever, but for the first time in a long time, that quiet didn't feel like a punishment. It felt like peace. It was almost 3 months to the day since Diana had moved out when I got the message. Diana, can we talk? I stared at it for a minute. Just a plain text. No emojis. No passive-aggressive subtext. Just those 4 words. I didn't answer right away. That night, she called. I let it ring twice before I picked up. Hey, she said quietly. Her voice sounded smaller than I remembered, like someone unsure of their place. Hi, I said. There was a long pause. Then she exhaled. I'm not calling to argue. Good, I said, because I wouldn't stick around for it. She let out a weak laugh, like she knew she deserved that. I've been going to therapy. Every week. Yeah, you mentioned that. And it's made me realize a lot. About myself. About how I let things get this bad. How I treated you. I didn't say anything. I let her keep going. I took you for granted, she continued. I expected you to keep giving and never questioned if I was giving anything back. And when you finally stopped, I made you the bad guy. I'm sorry. I leaned back in my chair. That's the first time you've said that. I know, she whispered. She went on for a while. About how Lucas ghosted her. How she hadn't realized how much she relied on me emotionally, not just financially. How she missed our life, even the boring parts. How Lillian had started talking to her differently now, pointing out the same things I had once tried to say and gotten shut down for. So what now? I asked. I don't know, she said honestly. I'm not asking to move back in. I know trust takes time, but I'd like to work on it. Maybe start fresh. Slowly. I didn't answer right away. I thought about how peaceful the house had been. How I'd been sleeping through the night again. How Lillian and I had found this rhythm, quiet but real. How I no longer felt like I was running an emotional marathon just to keep everything from falling apart. I'm not saying no, I said carefully. But I'm not saying yes either. Diana was quiet. I'll keep going to therapy, she said finally. Even if you don't take me back. I need it. And maybe we can do one of those joint sessions again? If you're up for it. I sighed. We'll see. After we hung up, I sat in the quiet again. It didn't feel the same as it used to. It didn't hurt anymore. Later that night, Lillian came downstairs for a snack. Was that Mom? Yeah. She popped open the fridge. She asked to come back? I nodded. You gonna let her? I looked at her, and for the first time in years, she met my eyes without a trace of bitterness. I don't know yet, I said. But if I do, it's going to be on my terms this time. She closed the fridge and shrugged. Fair. And somehow, that single word said more than a whole conversation. It's been 6 months since Diana first reached out asking to talk. We've come a long way since then, but not in the way most people would expect. She didn't move back in. Not yet, at least. We started with therapy. Joint sessions, every other week. At first, it felt like we were just digging up the old junk again. Resentments, betrayals, all the things we had never really said out loud. But the more we kept showing up, the more the conversation started to shift. Less blame, more honesty. And for once, Diana stopped deflecting. She stopped laughing things off, stopped telling me I was too sensitive. She listened. Actually listened. One night after a session, she sat with me in the parking lot and said, "You were never trying to control us. You were just trying to feel like you mattered." It hit me harder than I expected. She was starting to get it. We kept our distance. She stayed in her apartment across town. We saw each other during therapy, the occasional coffee, the occasional dinner. It wasn't romantic, not really. It was like two people learning how to talk to each other again after a long war. I wasn't in a hurry. I had boundaries now. And I'd built a life I wasn't willing to give up again. At home, things were different with Lillian too. She didn't magically turn into the perfect teenager, but she softened. She started asking me questions about my day. Started inviting me to her school stuff, her debate meets, a jazz band performance I never even knew she was part of. One night she asked me to help her study for finals, and we ended up laughing over flashcards until midnight. Small things, but real things. One afternoon while we were driving, she said, "I used to think you just liked being in charge." I glanced at her. "And now, I think you just wanted to feel like you were part of this family." I didn't say anything at first. I didn't trust my voice. Eventually, I nodded. "Yeah, that's pretty much it." She looked out the window. "You were right about Mom, by the way. She didn't tell me everything. And when she did, it was twisted. I didn't push. I didn't need to." The truth was finally starting to make its way to the surface. Diana made progress, too. She started budgeting for the first time in her adult life. Picked up extra shifts. Started covering some of Lillian's expenses on her own. She even offered to reimburse me for things from before: tuition payments, credit card bills. I told her to keep her money. "I don't need it back," I said. "I just need to know I won't be the only one paying next time." One night we sat on a bench outside the therapist's office. Diana asked, "Do you think we'll ever go back to how things were?" I shook my head. "No, but maybe that's a good thing." She looked down. "So what are we now?" I shrugged. "Something new. Something better, I hope. But it starts with honesty. And respect. No more pretending." She nodded slowly. "Okay, I can live with that. The old version of our family is gone. The version where I did everything and hoped someone would notice. The version where love was quiet and resentment was even quieter. What we have now, it's messier. It's slower. It's full of awkward silences and hard conversations. But it's real. And I finally know what it feels like to stand up for myself and still be standing when the dust settles. We're not a perfect family. We're just a work in progress. And for once, that's enough."